Welcome to GRE Snacks, snackable episodes about the GRE, GMAT, and graduate school admissions. I'm Tyler, the founder of Achievable, and we have an affordable GRE course that includes everything you need to ace your exam. A full textbook, videos on key topics, tons of GRE practice questions backed by our memory-enhancing algorithm, a built-in study planner and essay grader, and full-length practice exams. You can try it out for free by going to achievable.me, and if you like it, use the code PODCAST to get 10% off at checkout. Now, let's get started. Today we've got Oren Margolis from Pinetree Palm Consulting with us. And Oren, I'd love if you could introduce yourself and your company.
Yes, I would love to. Thanks again for having me, Tyler. Always a pleasure to be here, and I'm really excited about this one, especially. My name is Oren Margolis. I run Pinetree Palm Consulting, which is a boutique MBA admissions consulting firm. I also do grad admissions and a couple other things. I have been running my firm for about 6.5 years and work with clients all across the MBA lifecycle, basically making the most of their business school applications, primarily to the top programs across full-time, part-time, and executive MBA programs. I am also a leadership career and executive coach who works primarily with folks in leadership positions, but also folks that are kind of carving out their careers and figuring where to go. I have a career both in MBA admissions and also in HR and talent development. So it kind of puts me at the nexus of those two things and makes me very, very excited to talk about what we're talking about today.
Great. Yeah, and today, basically combines both of those passions, right? Aligning your career goals to your MBA ambitions. And why is it important that this matters, right? I mean, obviously, sure, your MBA is meant to get you your next job in a lot of ways. And sometimes people use it to move laterally or to kind of adjust their career trajectory. But how do you, when you're talking to clients about this, frame it and kind of develop a deeper conversation about that?
Yeah. So you can't really have the tail wagging the dog, right?
Mhm.
I have a lot of people come to me and they're like, I really want to get an MBA. And they're like, why? And I'm like, why? And they're like, well, I just really want one. And I'm like, okay, it's not a great reason. Fundamentally, an MBA is an investment in your career in some way, shape, or form. And it's like a big investment too. It's a lot of money, it's a lot of time. Um, it is a means to something. And that something could be immediate, that something could be longer term. Um, it got to have something to do, though, with furthering your career in a meaningful way. And for a lot of people, that means making a career pivot, getting a job right after business school. For some people, it means a longer term investment in skill building and network, or even in pedigree or cachet. Um, but in order to figure out what type of MBA journey is best for you need to have conviction that you have a path ahead of you, that you know why you are actually doing this, and that you will be able to make the most of it when it actually happens. So when people start MBA programs, they don't realize that they generally jump right into the fire with recruiting for their next job, essentially, if they're in a full-time MBA program. Um, and so, my philosophy is to make sure people have that career conviction, clarity in what they're actually trying to achieve here by doing this MBA in order to A, put themselves forward in their applications in a way that resonates, but more importantly, to have like a really valuable MBA experience that serves them in a way that's useful for their careers.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the key thing, right, is to actually understand what it can do for your career and not
Yeah,
just go in with preconceived notions I'll just, I'll get it if I get into HBS, then I'll just be rich after that. It's like, okay, but
right.
first off, with the recent HBS graduate data and them having a hard time getting white collar jobs just because it's kind of a white collar job market's really tough right now. That's already kind of being questioned even at the highest level. But it's also like, again, I think that it can't just be, I want to be paid more or I want to be up 2 promotion levels up. So I'm going to go do an MBA detour and come back. I think it almost there needs to be a deeper reasoning why the MBA is going to help give you the tools you need maybe for that higher level role or to qualify for it or things like that. And do you agree
Well,
with
and
that?
I do. And I mean, first and foremost, a lot of people don't even know what that higher level role actually is. Like they know they want to
Mhm.
move up, but, and they also know that they want to do it in a way that fulfills them. Um, they think an MBA like might fit into that picture somehow, but they don't necessarily have a clear-eyed view of what that next thing actually is. And so it means that they're going into this degree like hazy on all of those dimensions, which is bad. It means that they have not done the work of aligning what an MBA can actually do for them if they don't know what they want it to do.
Right.
Because different formats and different timing of MBA can do a lot of different things. But to your point, yeah, an MBA is not like a magic bullet that just like gives you money. In fact, an MBA costs a lot of money,
Mhm.
or can cost a lot of money if you're, depending on the program and scholarship and whatnot. A huge misconception out there is that, to your point, like you get into one of these top schools and a job like that's really high paying and really fulfilling automatically falls into your lap. And
Right.
that is never true.
And
That
that
is literally
solves
never
all of the
true.
problems that you've had so far.
Solve all your problems, right?
Great
And
boss, company whose work it really aligns with,
yeah,
all that stuff just magically appears.
yeah. And at the risk of being a little woo woo, the whole point here, like I don't care what process you're embarking upon, is to
Mhm.
like live a better life, right?
Right.
And so
If that's a
that
little woo
should
woo, then I feel like that needle or that goalpost has moved a lot.
yeah, right. So, but we're looking for life alignment here, right? And
Yes.
so for some people, they are motivated by a salary bump. For some people, they are looking for something that is more in line with their career interests, or they're looking for more of a challenge, or they're looking to make a bigger impact. And so those are all things to spend, in my opinion, a lot of time really spinning out before saying, I'm going to use an MBA as a vehicle to like do something.
Mhm.
Having an idea of what you're doing is really, really useful. And just to put a finer point on something we were just talking about, there is no MBA program that will hand you any job, um, least of all, a job that ticks all of those boxes.
Mhm.
Now, there are certain MBA programs that are much more likely and able to open doors to specific job opportunities
Mhm.
with the requisite amount of kind of investment by the MBA student themselves.
Right.
So there's always a level of self-guidedness, depending on what format and what type of program, the amount can vary.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I feel like we've almost been very negative on the MBA for this first little bit, but let's turn it around. What are the signs
Yeah,
that
yeah,
someone
yeah.
should do it, right? And I mean, maybe another kind of frame of that is what are the decision making factors that you should be going through in your own head as you're kind of thinking about this? Yeah.
Yeah, and don't like please don't mistake my vigilance with negativity because I do this work. I strongly believe in the value of an MBA for the right type of person. I even more strongly believe in the value of the right type of MBA at the right time for the right person with the right goals. So an MBA can open up all of that. So for folks,
Hmm.
the classic example of someone who is really well positioned to get a full-time MBA is someone who has a couple of years of experience, of work experience under their belt, has really clarified what they want their career, the next phase of their career to look like. They
Hmm.
probably want a little bit of career velocity and acceleration, maybe increase their earnings, and probably want to do a slight or even more drastic pivot. They've realized that that answer is not in the job or trajectory that they are currently on.
Hmm.
And so that is a really wonderful reason to take a step back for 2 years, go hard at making that pivot in an environment that frankly wouldn't otherwise exist, and that an MBA can open doors to. Um, so, that career pivot is a really, really good signal that an MBA could be in in the conversation.
Hmm.
Um, Depending on what the pivot is too. If it's a pivot to something that an MBA can open doors to, if you're looking to make a pivot to academia or the arts, like probably not an MBA. If you're looking to make a pivot from academia or the arts to consulting, finance, something that's a little bit more in the MBA wheelhouse, yeah, great reason. Um, there are also a lot of folks that get to a certain point in a career that they're really happy with and realize oh crap, I actually have a couple of pretty glaring skills gaps that are not serving me well in my forward looking trajectory or that I need to accumulate more of. So skill building and getting like a critical mass of skill building is certainly another reason to embark upon an MBA. For folks who are undergoing leadership challenges or having trouble, feel like they've reached a ceiling of some point, whether it's in promotional trajectory or salary trajectory, ability to take their skills and make them translatable to their future ambitions. Those are all great signals to maybe consider, like start considering an MBA.
Mhm.
I will also carefully throw in there folks that are interested in exploring or gaining access or exposure to new industries and functions that are out there.
Right.
Um, could be a great reason to surround yourself with folks in very different careers than you are in. Um, maybe in the context of a full-time MBA, more likely in the context of a part-time MBA. So a
Right.
lot of different reasons and a lot of different kind of like discrete moments. A couple more like classic than others, if you will.
I've got to ask, and I forgive me for asking this question. Um, but do you feel like, so, it's pretty typical to think of MBAs as a way to upskill yourself, particularly in the ways of, managing a larger team and, potentially like interacting with high value clients or like other stuff like that.
Sure.
What about the buzzword of the day, AI? Do you feel like MBA programs have adapted to this, like, essentially, like, instead of managing a larger team, it's like, how do you use AI to do the work of a team of 20 people, right? Like, is that even on people's radar yet or not really?
Oh, it's definitely on people's radar and it's definitely on the school's radar. I would almost think about AI is like underlying context. It is happening. It is part of everything that we do and will be doing.
Mm-hmm.
The schools know that. I would almost think of an MBA as a set of tools, skills, structures, and ways of thinking that can help you adapt to things like AI that come into the mix. So, as an MBA, you might be better equipped to, as a leader, to adapt to all of the changes that AI is bringing into the workforce. So, like an MBA does impart a level of sort of like professional versatility. It's a general degree, so it's a general management degree. So, generally folks that emerge from MBA programs do emerge with a certain way of strategic thinking about the way they manage, the way they lead, the way they approach business challenges, and AI is part of that. I don't know if I would embark upon an MBA specifically to learn how to use AI in a more like applied way. I think
Mm-hmm.
there are certainly courses that the programs are rolling out, and some programs are rolling out
Yeah, there's a lot
dedicated
of just
courses
like
on it. But
resources online, right? There's a lot of people running around trying to make a name for themselves doing this anyway, so maybe you don't need
if
the
you're,
MBA to focus on that. But I was just
yeah, like
curious.
if you're wanting to learn AI prompting, like I don't know if I would take on the MBA price tag just to do that. I think there are much more efficient ways to do that. But if you are wanting to sort of shore up your managerial leadership and strategic skills in the context of AI, and MBA is totally fair game.
Mhm. Got it. Okay, great. Yeah, then let's talk also. I mean, the other thing is, for me at least, what I found, because I look at GRE data
Yeah,
pretty regularly, and it seems like there is a pretty distinct cliff where after 35 years old, only 2% of people get MBAs. Or sorry, I said that wrong. It's that 2% of the people getting MBAs are over 35 when they
sure.
start.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
So it really, like, to me, it has always felt like this sort of like early career accelerator or maybe like a mid career like transition point. But I'm curious if you agree with that, if that's changed, and just kind of in general, kind of, where is are executive MBAs changing this dynamic at all? Yeah, just curious what you think about sort of the landscape right now.
Um, Anecdotally, and from my conversations also with some folks at MBA programs, the age profile or experience level profile of executive MBAs are actually getting younger. Um, take that with a grain of salt, fully anecdotal. But look, an MBA is an investment, no matter which way you slice it. And the
Yes.
older you get, the less appetite there is to invest, right? Because if there's going to be less time for payoff, there's less reason to invest. So I think that's why an MBA really is, to your point, it's an accelerator, and for full-time MBAs especially, it is this chance to be able to be on the career trajectory you're on and make a left-hand turn, um, make more money, but go into a completely different, or at least different career pathway.
Right.
That's the type of thing. And also for full-time MBAs, that is a time-consuming endeavor, and it kind of sucks all the air out of the room, right?
Hmm.
So folks without a lot of other responsibilities who are able to fully invest 2 years in the case of a full-time MBA, um, tend to be on the younger side. Not always, but
Right.
when things like families and spouses and life gets harder the older you get and more complicated, people's appetite for things like studying for a test or going to class multiple times a week or doing homework or whatever just becomes a little bit lower. The juice isn't always worth the squeeze.
Yeah.
But that being said, I've seen plenty of folks who are later in their careers or midway through their careers and realize, hey, I'm like on the cusp of becoming an executive, but A, I've inventoried all these skills that I don't necessarily have, and B, I know that the types of companies I'll be looking at or my company does value higher education or an MBA in that decision making process. So call it pedigree, call it skill building. An MBA can definitely be a really good quote unquote insurance policy or something to have in your back pocket for folks who are already on a promising career trajectory.
Mm.
So it's more of a long term view of what an MBA can do for them. Same thing from a networking perspective. Thinking about people who work at like consulting firms or
Hmm.
wealth managers or other areas where having a book of business is necessary. Network is everything, right? And so
Right.
for a lot of people, for every MBA, the network is a compelling career reason to do it. But what you're leveraging that network for can look really different depending on seniority in your career.
For sure, yeah. And I mean, I think I think you've touched on like two things that I want to kind of follow up on here, right? Which is first is like, the difference between these programs, both kind of in terms of what they require from you and also what you'll get out of them.
Yeah.
And then also how that, for lack of a better word, like ROI, right? You're talking about an investment, like how that ROI is going to change which format you want to pursue. Because, if your goal is to build a network, do executive MBAs build a network as well as full time? Like, probably
Mhm.
not, but like, what's the trade off there, right? Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they do. So I'm curious what you think about this.
Yeah, so the programs are really, really different actually. And just at the top, I would push back on that because executive MBA programs tend to be super cohort based. They tend to be sort of in one place at one time for a consolidated amount of time over the course of like 14 to 22 months. It's highly experiential. And it's with folks who are there for the right reasons. They want to be there. They're busy working professionals and they're high powered in their fields. And so that's all the makings of really, really, really strong network building, actually. It looks different than a full time program where you're basically in residency for 2 full years. So different, but also different population. So there are very big differences between these three types of programs. And I'll sort of talk about the general profile of folks who participate in these programs and why. So a full-time MBA program, you can think of it as like an all-in commitment. It's an all-in program. Um, all you're doing for 2 years is you're in class, you're at clubs, you're with your cohort, you're recruiting for a summer internship and a post MBA job. You're generally there to make a career pivot or highly accelerate your career. And you may also be in it
Well, and so are
with,
other people.
well, yes, yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's who you're surrounding yourself with. So you are surrounded by a group of like minded folks who are all in and are looking to make a switch for the most part.
Right.
Um, Also, highly experiential. So any kind of Hallmark resource, program, event, travel, all those things that you hear about when you hear about top MBA programs, prestige are all parts of a full-time MBA program. They're all features or hallmarks of a full-time MBA program. Also, a major hallmark of a full-time MBA program is the recruiting machine. And when I say recruiting machine, I mean in the fall, all of the top investment banks, management consulting firms, sometimes tech firms, descend on campus in a very structured way with a very structured timeline, specifically for the purpose of recruiting MBA level interns and full-time employees. Yeah. And nowhere else in one's career does this opportunity rear its head than in a full-time MBA program.
Yeah, where you're getting lobbed, right? Exactly.
Yeah. And that's really the value proposition for a lot of full-time MBAs as well. I have a dedicated chance where an investment bank will want to recruit me into their post-MBA level job when I don't necessarily have the requisite quote unquote experience.
Right.
So that's a full-time MBA. You can think of a part-time MBA as being a little bit more opt-in terms of the overall experience. So, some people do a part-time MBA, they just attend class and then they cut out and run. Some people are heavily involved in student life, in networking and community building. You can think of it though, so it's definitely more flexible for the most part. People are in the mindset of balancing work, life, and school. And it's also less of a career machine. So that idea of like companies
right, so it's like less in but less out, right?
Potentially. Less in but less out. I don't know if I would agree with that characterization. I would say as much out of it as you put into it. So, plenty of people do come into part-time programs wanting to switch their careers or evolve their careers while they're in those programs. They generally need to be more self-guided in terms of the tactics and how to do that. They need to be a little bit more industrious. They're not necessarily given those same opportunities that full-time MBA programs are to attend, like, UBS's networking event on Tuesday night specifically for full-time MBA students. They might get access to those resources, but they might have to fight for them, or they might really need to work their network of other folks who are in this program and are working professionals, which can have huge benefits. I went to a part-time program at NYU. That was the program that I graduated from, and I was surrounded by a lot of folks who are working in very prestigious financial services institutions. Ended up essentially leveraging that network to network my way into a job at American Express, which I would have never otherwise been able to do.
Right.
But that was a me thing and network thing, not I was handed this job opportunity type of thing.
Right.
And then the final one is the executive MBA, and it's what it sounds like. It's for folks that are either executives or have aspirations or high likelihoods of moving into the executive tier in their career. So they tend to be older. They tend to be a certain title or level. I think the average age or the average years of experience for executive MBAs is usually around 14 years of experience. So decidedly different cohort there. These programs, though, are highly experiential. They're often structured in a way that you are getting kind of a highly concentrated dose of MBA at a time, and that includes clubs and coursework. But it's generally not for people that are like needing to use any program they matriculate in to be, again, like handed a job or go into any kind of career recruiting machine. That being said, these programs are typically pretty high sheen. They resonate really well in the marketplace for those that are recruiting executives or for companies who value the idea of a MBA for a higher level employee. And so it can be a really great investment, both in network and also skills and tools to have in your back pocket as you kind of embark on the latter phase of your career.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think that it's important to have that in mind even before you start, right? Because at the end of the day, like your career goals are, first off, like why you're doing it, right? Or it should be. But second off, it's also like a key piece of the application.
100%. And that is the point of me. So you can tell, as I just talked about, these programs all serve, they're pretty different lanes that they swim in. Same skills, same classes, um, but they are different lanes and they serve different purposes, especially from a career perspective. So if you're someone who's like, I just want an MBA, and in your head, you think that means full-time MBA, you might actually really be a better candidate for a part-time MBA, which might link up with your career ambitions even better. If you're in a job that you're pretty happy with and want to continue to progress in that job, not sacrifice income, build a network and gain some skills, it's like the classic profile for a part-time MBA.
Right. Well,
Um,
and it's also like you could potentially pitch this to your job and have them like pay
yeah,
for part of it or something, right? Like there's a
yeah,
lot of
you
things.
can, and you can get that promotion while you're in business school, right? You don't need to remove yourself from the job market and re-enter it. And as we all know, like the job market is super uncertain and super volatile. It's not a sure thing to get a job even after a full-time MBA. So I see a lot of people who are have good high-paying jobs that they don't want to let go of and are considering a full-time MBA. And it's a real conversation about um, like probability of getting a job and the caliber of job that you're looking for after business school. That being said, some people are solving for um, having a prestigious all-in experience that will also dramatically level up their career, even if they are staying in the same career trajectory. And in that case, a full-time MBA can make a lot of sense, right?
Mhm.
If they want to have a prestigious degree that has catapulted them to the next level, has armed them with some like optics that look good, a network that looks good. It's an experience that they know that they're going to get at some point. Like a full-time MBA can make total sense and can fit into the career narrative that they're looking to build.
Mhm.
Um, I think the point of this conversation is for folks who really don't know where they're going next, like they might be a little lost in their career. And to be clear, that is the majority of people, at least that come across my desk, who no one really knows what they're doing in life and in their career, right? And
Mhm.
so, um, you know, part of folks' charge in the MBA admissions process is to clearly articulate why MBA, why now, what are your career goals, short term and long term, um, and they're assessing how feasible and fully formed are those goals. A lot of people go into the MBA admissions process basically faking it. And guess what? It makes it so much harder to create a compelling narrative for yourself. And then when you actually get to business school, you have to figure it out. You have to like actually figure that out pretty quickly in order to get the most of business school when you're there. And so that's why I say front loading that career exploration work, like really doing a deep dive on motivations, values. What am I actually solving for? What am I actually looking toward? Is by far the best service you can do for yourself if an MBA is in the equation.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also, I mean, like you said, nobody has everything figured out today, right? So like, don't feel bad, but also like you should
Totally.
have some ideas and you should have some place you want to go. And then the other part of it too is that once you get into your MBA program, a lot of times that's where you'll be exposed to a lot of things and maybe figure out a lot more pointedly what direction you want to take them.
Totally. And the takeaway here is not that you have to know exactly what you want to do going into an MBA program. And this advice is like a little contrarian, but I actually believe in this pretty strongly. A little bit of optionality, even for full-time MBA programs, is totally fine, as long as that optionality is like sensible optionality. So
Yeah.
if you're putting forward an application, or actually, let me say, if you are um, thinking about applying to MBA programs and you think that your end goal is to either go into banking or marketing, those are two wildly different career trajectories, career paths. Like they're just
Well,
so
they have like
different,
different like expectations. They're in different
fully different
industries. Yeah.
expectations. In terms of time management, you will not be able to recruit for like let's just say CPG marketing jobs and investment banking jobs at the same time. They are two very, very, very rigorous processes that happen concurrently in the first semester of of an MBA program. From a time management and like hours on the day perspective, that will not happen. So taking the time to understand, okay, like I actually, and also from a identity perspective, it's like pretty hard to be like super well suited to both of those things. So taking time to inventory, like, okay, you know what? I actually am, I actually really like working. I don't mind working long hours. I am kind of solving for money here. I am more of a quant. Those are some good reasons why investment banking might be a better option to go full steam ahead with. And then the optionality, a good optionality might look like, hey, I am primarily oriented toward investment banking, but if that doesn't work out, I'm also open to corporate finance type roles in a specific industry that I'm interested in. So
Right.
that's the type of optionality that feels reasonable, right? I work with a lot of folks who are interested in sustainability, and so they tend to couch their career goals as wanting to go into a sustainability role at like a sustainability role at a CPG company, or work in an internal strategy role at a company that prioritizes sustainability, right? So they're
Right.
not the same exact goal. It introduces a little bit of flexibility, a little bit of adaptability, depending on how things go recruiting wise, but it's in the same wheelhouse. So you're allowed to get into an MBA program and flesh that out a little bit more. But being like, I want to do like maybe like sustainability, maybe investment banking, and maybe consulting, you know, that is not positioning you for success when you get in the door. And it's also non-coincidentally not a compelling story from an admission standpoint.
Great. Yeah, and as we kind of wrap up this podcast today, I mean, are there any kind of key takeaways or things that I didn't cover that you want to make sure we talked about?
The only thing I'll mention, and it kind of came up with, I'm glad we talked about optionality a little bit. Just underscoring the idea of conviction in goals. Look, like career planning is a lifelong process. It's really hard. A lot of folks are unhappy in their jobs and are unhappy in their career trajectories. A lot of folks haven't gotten the traction that they want to. No one expects you to have all the answers, but I'll take a sidetrack for a second and say I can be really cynical about the MBA admissions process and what it rewards and what it doesn't. Where I get very not cynical is the fact that the best applicants really are the ones that know themselves very, very, very well. Truly, really, honestly, and truly. And part of knowing yourself well is understanding your own motivations, your own skills, your own talents. And that leads into what your vision is for yourself. All of these things are part and parcel of one another. And so to that end, the admissions process is actually formulated well. Is it always? No. But for folks, for folks to really do that inward looking work is hard, it's labor intensive, it's time intensive, and it might require you to examine some questions that you'd rather not. But I promise that once you start to really peel back the onion of your career motivations and therefore your career aspirations, the MBA admissions process and your MBA experience will be like 100 times more fruitful than if you go in blind. And I truly, truly, truly believe that to my core.
Great. Thank you so much. This has been GRE Snacks, hosted by Tyler from Achievable with Oren Margolis from Pinetree Palm Consulting. And Achievable has a great online GRE course that you can try for free at achievable.me. Be sure to use the code podcast to get 10% off at checkout.